Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez never expected her military service to become a controversy. Standing 5 feet 4 inches tall with a slight frame that belied her incredible strength, she had always been underestimated by those who judged capability by appearance. Her dark hair was always pulled back in regulation style, and her uniform was consistently immaculate, pressed to perfection with creases sharp enough to cut paper. What distinguished her most, however, was the quiet confidence in her brown eyes that spoke of experiences few could imagine. Born in a small Texas border town where military service was a family tradition, Maria had grown up hearing stories of courage and sacrifice from her grandfather, a World War II veteran, and her father, who served 3 tours in Vietnam. The Rodriguez family understood that freedom came with a price, and they were willing to pay it. When Maria announced her intention to join the Marines at 17, her family wasn't surprised. They had watched her excel in everything she attempted, from competitive shooting to martial arts, always pushing herself beyond what others thought possible. Boot camp at Parris Island was where Maria first encountered the skepticism that would follow her throughout her career. Drill instructors questioned whether someone of her size could handle the physical demands of Marine Corps life. She answered their doubts not with words, but with performance. Every physical fitness test, every obstacle course, every challenge thrown her way became an opportunity to prove that heart and determination mattered more than height or weight. By graduation, even her harshest critics had to admit she possessed something special. Her first assignment took her to Camp Pendleton, where she specialized in reconnaissance operations. The training was brutal, designed to weed out those who couldn't handle the mental and physical stress of operating behind enemy lines. Maria thrived in this environment. She had an almost supernatural ability to move silently through terrain, to observe without being observed, and to remember details that others missed. Her instructors noted that she possessed what they called tactical instinct, an ability to read situations and make split-second decisions that kept her alive and mission-focused. During advanced training exercises, Maria consistently outperformed Marines who had size and experience advantages. She could carry her full combat load for miles without showing fatigue, shoot accurately under stress, and maintain composure in chaotic situations that left others rattled. Her small stature actually became an advantage in reconnaissance work, allowing her to hide in spaces where larger Marines couldn't fit and move through areas without detection. Fellow Marines began to respect her abilities, though some still questioned whether she could handle real combat conditions. The opportunity to prove herself came sooner than expected when her unit received deployment orders to Afghanistan. The war was entering a crucial phase where small teams were conducting specialized missions deep in Taliban territory. Maria's reconnaissance skills made her an ideal candidate for these dangerous operations. Before deployment, she underwent additional training in advanced marksmanship, explosives handling, and survival techniques. Each skill she mastered added to her confidence and capability. Afghanistan proved to be everything the training had prepared her for, and more. The mountainous terrain was unforgiving, with temperatures that could swing from scorching heat to bone-chilling cold within hours. The enemy was skilled, motivated, and intimately familiar with the landscape. For Maria, these challenges represented the ultimate test of everything she had learned and trained for throughout her Marine Corps career. Her first combat mission involved a 3-day reconnaissance of a suspected Taliban stronghold in a remote mountain valley. Maria and 3 other Marines were tasked with gathering intelligence on enemy positions, numbers, and activities without being detected. The mission required them to move through hostile territory, establish observation posts, and report their findings back to headquarters. Success meant valuable intelligence for future operations. Failure could mean death or capture. The team moved under cover of darkness, navigating treacherous mountain paths that would challenge experienced hikers in daylight. Maria's ability to read terrain and move silently proved invaluable as they approached their target area. She identified safe routes, spotted potential ambush sites, and helped her team avoid detection during the 18-hour approach march. By dawn, they had established a concealed observation post overlooking the Taliban compound. For 2 days, Maria maintained continuous surveillance of the mission that would change everything began like countless others during Maria's deployment. Intelligence reports indicated a high-value Taliban commander was meeting with foreign fighters in a remote compound near the Pakistan border. The target represented a significant threat to coalition forces and had been responsible for coordinating attacks that killed American soldiers. Maria's unit received orders to conduct a direct action raid to eliminate the threat and gather intelligence. Planning for the operation took 3 days, with every detail scrutinized and rehearsed. Maria's role was to provide precision fire support from an overwatch position that would give her clear lines of sight to the compound while remaining hidden from enemy observation. The position required her to move alone through 2 miles of hostile territory and establish herself before the main assault force began their approach. It was dangerous work that relied entirely on her skills and judgment. The night of the operation, Maria moved through darkness toward her assigned position. The terrain was treacherous, filled with loose rock that could create noise and hidden crevices that could cause serious injury. She navigated using night vision equipment and careful movement techniques that had become second nature through months of combat operations. Every step was calculated to avoid detection while maintaining progress toward her objective. Reaching her overwatch position 2 hours before dawn, Maria established a concealed firing position that offered excellent visibility of the target compound. Through her rifle scope, she could observe enemy sentries moving around the perimeter and lights in buildings where the meeting was supposedly taking place. The intelligence appeared accurate, confirming the presence of significant enemy activity in the area. She reported her observations to the Tactical Operations Center and waited for the assault to begin. As the sun rose, Maria's scope revealed details that intelligence briefings had not captured. The compound was larger than expected, with more buildings and better defensive positions than originally thought. Enemy fighters were well-armed and appeared alert, suggesting they might have received warning about potential coalition activity in the area. The tactical situation was more complex and dangerous than anyone had anticipated. When the assault force began their approach, Maria identified multiple threats that posed immediate danger to the advancing Marines. Her first shot eliminated a sentry who was about to sound an alarm that would have compromised the entire operation. The bullet struck its target at a range of 400 yards, dropping the enemy fighter before he could alert his comrades. The precision and timing of the shot allowed the assault force to maintain surprise during their approach. The battle that followed tested every aspect of Maria's training and combat experience. Enemy fighters appeared from concealed positions throughout the compound, engaging the assault force with automatic weapons and rocket-propelled grenades. From her overwatch position, Maria could see threats that the ground force couldn't detect, making her fire support crucial to their survival and mission success. Her second shot came moments after the first, eliminating a machine gunner who was setting up to engage the assault force from an elevated position. The range was nearly 600 yards, requiring her to account for wind, elevation, and the movement of her target. The shot was technically challenging under ideal conditions, but she was firing under combat stress while coordinating with multiple radio networks and observing a rapidly changing battlefield. As the firefight intensified, Maria found herself engaging targets at an unprecedented rate. Enemy fighters seemed to appear from every corner of the compound, each one representing a potential threat to friendly forces. Her training had prepared her for sustained combat, but the intensity and duration of this engagement exceeded anything she had experienced during her deployment. Yet she maintained her composure and accuracy, methodically eliminating threats as they appeared. Her third confirmed kill came when she spotted an enemy fighter attempting to flank the assault force through a dried creek bed. The target was partially concealed by vegetation and moving quickly through terrain that provided limited shooting opportunities. Maria tracked the fighter's movement, predicted his route, and fired when he emerged from cover. The shot traveled over 700 yards and struck the target center mass, preventing what could have been a devastating attack on the Marines. The tactical complexity of the situation required Maria to make split-second decisions about target priority and engagement procedures. Friendly forces were operating throughout the area, making positive target identification crucial to avoid fratricidal incidents. She had to continuously track the locations of friendly personnel while identifying and engaging enemy threats, all while under fire from multiple enemy positions. Her fourth engagement occurred when enemy reinforcements arrived from a neighboring compound. The new fighters were better equipped and more tactically proficient than the original defenders, suggesting they might be foreign fighters or specialized Taliban units. They attempted to establish positions that would allow them to suppress the assault force and potentially inflict casualties on the Marines. Maria's shot eliminated the apparent leader of the reinforcement. Maria's homecoming to Camp Pendleton was far different from what she had expected after 15 months of combat operations in Afghanistan. Instead of the quiet satisfaction of missions accomplished and fellow Marines brought home safely, she found herself facing an atmosphere of suspicion and doubt that seemed to permeate every interaction with senior leadership. The transition from combat zone to garrison duty was always difficult, but the questions surrounding her combat record made it particularly challenging. The first indication that her problems were far from over came during her initial debrief with the regimental intelligence officer. Major Patricia Hawkins had served multiple tours in Iraq, but had never deployed to Afghanistan. She approached Maria's combat record with the analytical mindset of someone accustomed to dealing with statistics and probability assessments rather than battlefield realities. The meeting was scheduled for 1 hour, but extended to nearly 3 as the Major questioned every aspect of Maria's reported engagements. Major Hawkins began by reviewing Maria's personnel file, noting her relatively junior rank and limited time in service compared to other Marines with similar combat records. She questioned whether someone with Maria's experience level could realistically achieve the results documented in after-action reports. The Major's tone was professional but clearly skeptical, as if she was conducting an investigation rather than a routine debrief. The questions became increasingly detailed and repetitive. Major Hawkins wanted exact distances for every shot, wind conditions during each engagement, and precise timing for all reported kills. She asked Maria to describe her equipment, ammunition types, and shooting positions in exhaustive detail. When Maria provided the requested information, the Major questioned whether the reported ranges were accurate and whether environmental conditions would have allowed such precision. Maria answered every question directly and honestly, drawing on her detailed memory of each engagement. She had always been meticulous about documenting her actions during combat operations, understanding that accurate records were important for tactical analysis and unit improvement. However, Major Hawkins seemed more interested in finding inconsistencies than understanding the tactical situations that had led to successful engagements. The Major's questions revealed her lack of understanding about mountain warfare and long-range marksmanship in Afghanistan's unique environment. She applied standards and assumptions based on different terrain and conditions, failing to account for the factors that made precision shooting possible at extended ranges in the Hindu Kush Mountains. When Maria attempted to explain these environmental factors, Major Hawkins dismissed them as convenient excuses for exaggerated claims. Following the intelligence debrief, Maria was scheduled for meetings with additional staff officers who had questions about her combat record. Each session followed a similar pattern, with officers who had never served in Afghanistan questioning the validity of reports that had been verified by Marines who had been present during the engagements. The repetitive questioning began to feel more like interrogation than professional review. Colonel James Morrison, the regimental commander, had served in both Iraq and Afghanistan but had never been assigned to units that conducted the type of specialized operations in which Maria had participated. His understanding of combat operations was based on conventional infantry tactics rather than the precision engagement techniques used by reconnaissance and sniper teams. When he reviewed Maria's record, he found the reported results difficult to reconcile with his own combat experience. The colonel's concerns were influenced by statistical analyses that suggested Maria's reported kill count was statistically improbable. Staff officers had calculated that her success rate was significantly higher than average sniper performance in previous conflicts, leading them to question whether the reports were accurate or potentially inflated. These statistical models failed to account for the specific conditions and tactics employed during Maria's missions. Maria found herself defending not only her own actions, but the integrity of the Marines who had served with her and the commanders who had verified her reports. The implication that her combat record was exaggerated or fabricated was an attack on the honor and credibility of everyone involved in documenting her achievements. This aspect of the controversy was particularly troubling, as it suggested systematic dishonesty within her former unit. The situation became more complex when media attention focused on Maria's story. Military journalists had learned about her exceptional combat record and were interested in writing articles about her achievements. However, the controversy surrounding her reported kills made public affairs officers reluctant to authorize interviews or provide information. The military's hesitation to support her story publicly added credibility to the doubts being expressed privately. Maria's former unit commander, Lieutenant Colonel David Martha, formal review board convened on a cold Monday morning in December, 3 months after Maria's return from Afghanistan. The boardroom at Camp Pendleton's headquarters building was sterile and intimidating, with fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across a long conference table surrounded by senior officers who would determine the validity of her combat record. Maria entered wearing her dress blue uniform, every ribbon and decoration precisely positioned, representing years of dedicated service and sacrifice. Brigadier General Robert Hayes presided over the review board, bringing with him a reputation for thorough analysis and uncompromising standards. He had served multiple combat tours, but primarily in conventional infantry roles that differed significantly from the specialized reconnaissance missions Maria had conducted. His approach to military problems was methodical and evidence-based, qualities that had served him well throughout his career, but might not favor Maria's case. The general's opening statement made clear that the board's purpose was to examine the accuracy of Maria's reported combat achievements and determine whether they met standards for official recognition and documentation. He emphasized the importance of maintaining the integrity of military records and ensuring that exceptional claims were supported by exceptional evidence. The tone was formal and skeptical, setting an adversarial atmosphere from the beginning. Colonel Morrison presented the case against Maria's reported achievements, using charts and statistical analyses that painted her performance as statistically impossible. He argued that her reported success rate exceeded historical norms for sniper effectiveness by margins that suggested either extraordinary circumstances or inaccurate reporting. His presentation was polished and persuasive, supported by data that appeared to undermine the credibility of Maria's documented achievements. The colonel's argument relied heavily on comparisons with sniper performance from previous conflicts, particularly Iraq and Vietnam. He contended that environmental conditions, target behavior, and engagement parameters in Afghanistan were not sufficiently different to account for the dramatic variation in Maria's reported results. His statistical model suggested that her claimed performance was so far outside normal parameters as to be virtually impossible. Major Hawkins followed with a detailed analysis of specific engagements, questioning the accuracy of reported distances, environmental conditions, and tactical circumstances. She had conducted extensive research into ballistics and marksmanship, using theoretical models to challenge the feasibility of Maria's reported shots. Her presentation was technical and comprehensive, designed to demonstrate that the documented achievements were physically improbable. The Major's analysis focused particularly on the longest-range engagements, arguing that atmospheric conditions in Afghanistan would have prevented accurate shooting at the distances Maria claimed. She cited ballistics tables and environmental studies that seemed to contradict the possibility of precise fire at ranges exceeding 800 yards. Her scientific approach lent credibility to the argument that Maria's reports were exaggerated. When Maria's turn came to respond, she stood with quiet confidence and began her defense with a simple statement that would become legendary within military circles. Looking directly at General Hayes, she said, "Sir, with respect, these officers are questioning achievements they never witnessed, using standards they've never applied in combat, and challenging capabilities they've never developed. I request permission to demonstrate rather than debate." The general was taken aback by her directness and unusual request. Military review boards typically involve testimony and document analysis, not practical demonstrations. However, Maria's suggestion intrigued him, as it offered a way to move beyond theoretical arguments to concrete evidence. After conferring briefly with other board members, he authorized a live-fire demonstration to test Maria's claimed capabilities. The demonstration was scheduled for the following week at Camp Pendleton's long-range shooting facility. Maria would be required to engage targets at distances similar to those reported in her combat achievements, under conditions that approximated the environmental factors present in Afghanistan. The test would be conducted under strict observation by qualified range. The final session of the review board began, with General Hayes acknowledging that Maria's demonstration had significantly impacted the board's assessment of her claimed capabilities. However, he emphasized that questions remained about whether her combat record accurately reflected what had occurred during actual engagements in Afghanistan. The burden was now on Maria to address these remaining doubts and provide compelling evidence that her documented achievements were genuine. Maria rose to address the board with the same quiet confidence she had displayed throughout the process. She had prepared extensively for this moment, understanding that her response would determine not only the resolution of the current controversy, but also set precedents for how the military would evaluate exceptional performance in the future. Her statement would need to address both the technical aspects of her achievements and the broader implications of the skepticism she had faced. She began by thanking the board for the opportunity to demonstrate her capabilities and for the thorough review of her combat record. Her respectful tone acknowledged the board's responsibilities while maintaining her position that the documented achievements were accurate and deserved recognition. She understood the importance of showing professional courtesy even while defending herself against unjustified skepticism. Maria then addressed the statistical arguments that had been made against her record, pointing out that statistical models based on historical data from different conflicts and different tactical situations were inherently flawed when applied to her unique circumstances. She explained that the specific conditions in Afghanistan, combined with her specialized training and natural abilities, had created opportunities for exceptional performance that did not fit normal statistical patterns. Her explanation of mountain warfare conditions was detailed and technical, demonstrating deep understanding of the environmental factors that had influenced her combat performance. She described how altitude, temperature variations, and atmospheric conditions in the Hindu Kush Mountains created ballistic conditions that differed significantly from other combat environments. Her knowledge was clearly based on extensive experience rather than theoretical study. The most powerful portion of her statement addressed the institutional biases that had influenced the skepticism surrounding her achievements. Looking directly at each board member, Maria said, "The fundamental issue here is not whether my shots were possible, because I just proved they were. The issue is whether this institution can accept that exceptional performance sometimes comes from unexpected sources." Her words created a moment of uncomfortable silence in the boardroom as the implications of her statement sank in. She had identified the core problem underlying the entire controversy: the military's difficulty in accepting that someone who did not fit traditional profiles could achieve extraordinary results. The accusation was serious and direct, challenging the board to examine their own assumptions and prejudices. Maria continued by pointing out that every aspect of her performance had been witnessed, documented, and verified by Marines who had served alongside her in combat. She emphasized that questioning her record implicitly questioned the integrity and competence of multiple officers and enlisted personnel who had staked their own reputations on the accuracy of their reports. The controversy had grown beyond her individual case to become an attack on the credibility of an entire chain of command. She then addressed the gender and physical size issues that had influenced perceptions of her capabilities, stating bluntly that doubts about her achievements were often based on assumptions about what women and smaller individuals could accomplish rather than objective evaluation of documented performance. Her directness on this sensitive topic was calculated to force the board to confront uncomfortable truths about institutional bias. General Hayes attempted to interrupt, claiming that gender and size had not influenced the board's evaluation. Maria respectfully but firmly disagreed, pointing out that similar statistical anomalies by larger male Marines in previous conflicts had not generated comparable skepticism or formal review processes. Her research into historical precedents had revealed patterns of acceptance for exceptional performance that clearly correlated with traditional demographic profiles. The strength of her argument was reinforced by testimony from Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, who had prepared detailed comparisons with other exceptional combat records from Iraq and Afghanistan. His analysis showed that Maria's achievements, while statistically unusual, were not unprecedented when viewed in the context of specialized operations conducted under similar conditions. The data strongly supported her contention that institutional bias had influenced the controversy. Maria's final argument focused on the practical implications of the board's decision. She pointed out that military effectiveness depended on recognizing and utilizing exceptional capabilities wherever they were found, regardless of whether those capabilities fit traditional expectations. Allowing statistical models and institutional biases to override documented performance would ultimately weaken the military's ability to adapt and succeed in future conflicts. Her conclusion was both personal and professional, expressing pride in her service and achievements while acknowledging the challenges she had faced throughout her career. She stated that she had always understood that being different would require her to work harder and perform better than others to receive equal recognition. However, she argued that the current controversy went beyond normal challenges to represent a fundamental failure to value demonstrated capability over preconceived assumptions. The board recessed for deliberation, leaving Maria and her supporters to await a decision that would determine whether months of controversy would end in vindication or continued doubt. The atmosphere during the recess was tense, with observers discussing the strength of Maria's presentation and speculating about the board's likely decision. Everyone understood that the outcome would have implications extending far beyond one individual's military record. When the board reconvened, General Hayes delivered their findings with obvious reluctance. The demonstration of Maria's capabilities, combined with the strength of supporting testimony from field commanders, had convinced the majority of board members that her combat record was accurate. However, the general emphasized that their decision was based on evidence rather than endorsement of her confrontational approach to the review process. The board's official finding validated all of Maria's documented combat achievements and recommended her for recognition commensurate with her exceptional performance. The decision also included recommendations for policy changes to ensure that future evaluations of exceptional performance would be based on evidence rather than statistical models that might not account for unique circumstances or individual capabilities. Maria's response to the board's decision was characteristically understated. She thanked the members for their thorough review and expressed hope that the process would lead to improvements in how the military recognized and utilized exceptional talent. Her gracious acceptance of victory demonstrated the same professionalism she had maintained throughout the contentious review process. The aftermath of the board's decision created significant changes in how the military approached exceptional performance claims. New procedures were established to ensure that statistical analysis would be balanced with tactical expertise and first-hand testimony when evaluating unusual achievements. The policies specifically addressed the need to avoid demographic bias and ensure fair evaluation regardless of an individual's physical characteristics or background. Maria's case became a landmark within military circles, cited in training programs and professional development courses as an example of how institutional bias could interfere with accurate assessment of individual capabilities. Her courage in challenging established assumptions inspired other service members who had faced similar skepticism and discrimination based on factors unrelated to their actual performance. The recognition Maria ultimately received for her combat achievements was significant and public, helping to establish her reputation as one of the most effective combat Marines of her generation. However, she consistently emphasized that her individual recognition was less important than the systemic changes that resulted from her experience and would benefit future service members who might face similar challenges. Years later, Maria's confrontation with the review board would be remembered as a pivotal moment in military personnel policy, demonstrating the importance of evidence-based evaluation and the dangers of allowing statistical models and demographic assumptions to override documented performance. Her sharp comeback had indeed taken her critics by surprise, but, more importantly, it had forced positive changes that would improve military effectiveness for generations to come. The broader impact of Maria's case extended beyond military circles to influence discussions about performance evaluation in other organizations facing similar challenges with recognizing exceptional capability from unexpected sources. Her example provided a template for confronting institutional bias with evidence, professionalism, and unwavering commitment to truth and excellence in service to others, officers, and ballistics experts who could verify the results. Maria spent the intervening week preparing for what she understood would be the defining moment of her military career. She studied weather forecasts, inspected her equipment, and reviewed the ballistics calculations that would be crucial for success at extended ranges. The pressure was enormous, knowing that failure to demonstrate her capabilities would validate all the doubts that had been raised about her record. The morning of the demonstration brought perfect conditions for long-range shooting. Clear skies, minimal wind, and excellent visibility created an environment that closely matched the conditions Maria had experienced during her best combat engagements in Afghanistan. The range was set up with targets at distances ranging from 400 to 1,000 yards, representing the various ranges at which she had engaged enemy fighters. General Hayes attended the demonstration personally, along with the other review board members and several additional observers who had requested permission to witness the test. The atmosphere was tense, with everyone understanding that the results would either vindicate Maria's claims or confirm the skeptics' doubts. Maria appeared calm and focused as she prepared her equipment and reviewed the shooting plan. The first target was positioned at 400 yards, representing a relatively standard engagement distance for military marksmen. Maria's shot struck the center of the target with precision that impressed even the skeptical observers. She followed with shots at 500 and 600 yards, each one demonstrating accuracy that exceeded normal expectations for military marksmanship. As the target distances increased, the technical challenges became more significant. Wind effects, bullet drop, and atmospheric conditions all influenced trajectory calculations at longer ranges. Maria's shots at 700 and 800 yards continued to hit their targets with remarkable consistency, silencing many of the doubts that had been expressed about her capabilities. The final target was positioned at 900 yards, near the maximum effective range for her rifle system under ideal conditions. The shot required precise calculation of multiple environmental factors and flawless execution of marksmanship fundamentals. Maria took additional time to analyze conditions and prepare for what everyone understood would be the crucial test of her claimed abilities. Her shot at 900 yards struck the target with authority, creating a visible impact that could be clearly observed through spotting scopes. The range officer confirmed a center hit, validating Maria's capability to engage targets effectively at the distances she had reported during combat operations. The demonstration had provided concrete evidence that her claimed achievements were not only possible but reproducible under controlled conditions. Colonel Morrison's response to the demonstration was grudging acknowledgement that Maria possessed exceptional marksmanship skills. However, he argued that controlled range conditions differed significantly from combat stress, and that the demonstration did not prove her combat record was accurate. His position had shifted from questioning her capabilities to questioning whether those capabilities could be applied effectively under combat conditions. Major Hawkins was visibly shaken by the demonstration results, which contradicted her statistical analyses and theoretical models. She requested additional technical information about Maria's equipment and ammunition, suggesting that exceptional performance might be attributed to superior gear rather than superior skills. Her attempts to explain away the demonstration results appeared increasingly desperate to neutral observers. Maria's supporters seized on the demonstration results as complete vindication of her combat record. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez argued that the controlled demonstration actually understated her capabilities, since combat conditions had required her to perform under stress while making life-or-death decisions. He contended that her ability to achieve similar results on a peaceful range proved that her combat achievements were not only possible, but probably conservative estimates. General Hayes called for a recess to allow board members to discuss the implications of the demonstration. The clear evidence of Maria's exceptional capabilities had shifted the debate from whether such performance was possible to whether it had actually occurred during combat operations. The burden of proof had effectively shifted from Maria defending her record to skeptics proving it was inaccurate. When the board reconvened, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Maria's demonstration had provided irrefutable evidence of her capabilities and undermined many of the arguments that had been made against her combat record. However, some board members remained reluctant to fully accept her achievements, seeking compromise positions that would acknowledge her skills while maintaining some skepticism about specific claims. The tension in the room was palpable as board members struggled to reconcile their preconceptions with the evidence they had just witnessed. Maria's calm confidence throughout the process had impressed many observers and strengthened her position considerably. The stage was set for her final response to the board's questions and her ultimate vindication or condemnation by the formal review process. Tines traveled to Camp Pendleton to support her during the review process. He had personally observed Maria's performance during multiple combat operations and was outraged by the suggestions that her record was inaccurate. His testimony provided strong support for Maria's account, but staff officers questioned whether field commanders might have motivations to exaggerate their unit's achievements. The lieutenant colonel's defense of Maria was passionate and detailed. He described specific instances where her precision fire support had prevented casualties among his Marines and contributed to mission success. He provided tactical context that explained how Maria's unique skills and the specific conditions in Afghanistan had combined to create opportunities for exceptional performance. His credibility as a combat leader lent significant weight to his testimony. However, the review board was more influenced by statistical analysis than tactical testimony. Staff officers presented charts and graphs showing that Maria's reported performance exceeded normal parameters for sniper effectiveness. They argued that extraordinary claims required extraordinary evidence, and that the available documentation was insufficient to support the reported results. The board's approach reflected a bureaucratic mindset that valued quantifiable data over qualitative assessment. Maria's frustration grew as she realized that many of the officers questioning her record had never experienced the conditions under which she had operated. They applied peacetime standards and theoretical models to combat situations they had never encountered. Their skepticism was based on ignorance rather than knowledge, yet their positions gave them authority to challenge her achievements. The review process also revealed organizational prejudices about gender and physical size that influenced perceptions of combat capability. Some officers found it difficult to believe that a woman of Maria's stature could achieve the results attributed to her, despite clear evidence of her exceptional skills and training. These biases were rarely expressed directly, but influenced the questions asked and the standards applied to her case. Maria's supporters within the military community began organizing to defend her reputation and challenge the unfair treatment she was receiving. Veterans of Afghanistan operations who had witnessed similar performances understood that exceptional results were possible under specific conditions with properly trained personnel. They provided testimonials and technical analysis that supported Maria's account of her combat achievements. The controversy attracted attention from civilian marksmanship experts who analyzed Maria's reported engagements from a technical perspective. Their assessment confirmed that the shots she described were feasible given her equipment, training, and the environmental conditions in Afghanistan. The civilian analysis contradicted the military's statistical models and supported the accuracy of Maria's reported performance. As the formal review process continued, Maria maintained her military bearing and professionalism despite the stress and frustration of having her integrity questioned. She understood that her response to this challenge would define her character as much as her combat performance had demonstrated her skills. The situation required a different kind of courage than facing enemy fire, but it was no less important for her future and reputation. The mounting pressure from multiple directions began to affect Maria's daily routine and mental state. She found it difficult to focus on routine military duties while simultaneously defending her combat record and preparing for what appeared to be an increasingly adversarial review process. The stress was compounded by uncertainty about how the controversy would be resolved and what impact it might have on her military career. Despite the challenges she faced, Maria drew strength from the support of Marines who had served with her in Afghanistan. Their unwavering belief in her integrity and capabilities provided emotional sustenance during the difficult review period. She knew that their confidence in her was based on shared experience under the most dangerous conditions, and that their testimony carried moral weight regardless of bureaucratic skepticism. The stage was being set for a confrontation between those who believed in Maria's achievements based on first-hand knowledge and those who questioned them based on statistical analysis and institutional bias. The resolution of this conflict would determine not only Maria's future, but also establish precedents for how the military would evaluate and recognize exceptional performance by individuals who did not fit traditional profiles of combat effectiveness. Element, just as he was positioning his fighters for a coordinated attack. The range exceeded 800 yards, at the extreme limit of her rifle's effective capability. The shot required precise calculations for bullet drop, wind drift, and target movement, all performed under combat stress while enemy bullets were impacting near her position. The elimination of the enemy leader disrupted their attack and gave friendly forces time to adjust their positions. The battle continued for over 3 hours, with Maria providing continuous overwatch and fire support for the ground force. She engaged 12 different targets during the operation, confirming kills on 11 enemy fighters and forcing one to retreat to a position where ground forces could eliminate him. Each shot was carefully planned and precisely executed, demonstrating the highest levels of marksmanship skill under extreme combat conditions. When the compound was finally secured, the assault force discovered significant intelligence materials and confirmed the elimination of the high-value target. The mission was a complete tactical success, accomplished without any friendly casualties despite fierce enemy resistance. Maria's precision fire support had been crucial to this success, eliminating threats before they could inflict damage on advancing Marines. The after-action review praised Maria's performance as exceptional, noting that her accurate and timely fire support had prevented multiple potential casualties among friendly forces. Her ability to maintain accuracy under pressure while engaging targets at extreme ranges impressed even veteran Marines who had extensive combat experience. The mission report documented her 11 confirmed kills and recommended her for recognition. However, the very success that earned praise from field commanders also attracted attention from higher headquarters elements that questioned the reported results. Staff officers reviewing the reports found it difficult to believe that one Marine, particularly someone of Maria's size and experience level, could achieve such results during a single engagement. The skepticism was subtle initially, appearing as requests for additional documentation and clarification of engagement details. Maria's unit commander strongly supported the accuracy of the reports, having personally debriefed her immediately after the mission and verified her account with other Marines who had observed her performance. Fellow Marines who had fought alongside her confirmed that her fire support had been decisive in the mission's success. Yet questions continued to arise from personnel who had not been present during the operation. The controversy began to affect Maria's assignment to future missions. Some staff officers expressed concerns about placing too much reliance on one individual's capabilities, arguing that the reported results were statistically unlikely and potentially exaggerated. These doubts created tension between field commanders who had witnessed Maria's performance and rear area personnel who dealt only with paperwork and statistics. Despite the growing skepticism from some quarters, Maria continued to perform her duties with the same dedication and professionalism that had earned her reputation. She participated in additional combat operations, maintaining her high standards and continuing to provide exceptional service to her fellow Marines. Each mission added to her experience and expertise, preparing her for even greater challenges ahead. The questions about her combat record became a source of frustration for Maria and the Marines who served with her. They had witnessed her capabilities firsthand and knew the truth of her accomplishments. Yet they found themselves having to justify and defend reports that accurately reflected what had occurred during combat operations. The situation created an atmosphere of doubt that affected unit morale and cohesion. As her deployment neared its end, Maria faced the prospect of returning to the United States, where the controversy over her combat record would likely intensify. Higher-level commanders who had never served with her would have opportunities to question her achievements and challenge the validity of her reported kills. She prepared for this challenge with the same methodical approach that had served her well in combat operations. The final weeks of her deployment saw Maria participate in several more combat missions, each one adding to her already impressive record of achievement. She continued to demonstrate the skills and judgment that had made her such a valuable asset to her unit. However, she also began to understand that her greatest challenge might not come from enemy fighters in Afghanistan, but from fellow Marines who questioned her story back home, /ME position. She counted fighters, noted their equipment and routines, and identified key leadership figures. Her attention to detail was extraordinary. She could remember faces, weapons, and behavioral patterns that provided crucial intelligence value. When Taliban patrols came dangerously close to their position, her ability to remain motionless for hours at a time kept the team hidden and safe. The mission's success earned Maria recognition from her commanders and respect from her peers. However, it also marked the beginning of a combat tour that would test her skills in ways no training could fully prepare her for. The enemy adapted their tactics constantly, requiring Marines to think creatively and act decisively in life-or-death situations. Maria's combination of technical proficiency and tactical thinking made her an asset that commanders increasingly relied upon. Her second mission involved supporting a larger operation to clear Taliban fighters from a strategic valley. Maria's job was to provide overwatch for advancing infantry units, using her marksmanship skills to eliminate threats before they could engage friendly forces. The position required her to set up in an exposed area where she could observe the entire battlefield while remaining hidden from enemy fighters who would certainly target her if discovered. As the operation began, Maria found herself facing situations that tested every aspect of her training and character. Enemy fighters appeared at ranges varying from several hundred yards to dangerously close quarters. Each shot she fired had to be precise, not only to eliminate threats, but to avoid hitting friendly forces operating in the same area. The responsibility was enormous, knowing that Marines depended on her accuracy and judgment to survive the day. The physical demands of combat operations in Afghanistan pushed Maria to her limits daily. Carrying equipment that weighed nearly half her body weight, operating at high altitude in extreme weather conditions, and maintaining peak performance while under constant stress required mental and physical toughness that few possessed. Yet Maria not only endured these conditions but excelled in them, earning a reputation as one of the most reliable Marines in her unit. Between missions, Maria spent her time studying enemy tactics, improving her marksmanship skills, and mentoring younger Marines who looked up to her example. She understood that combat was not just about individual performance, but about the collective strength of the unit. Her willingness to share knowledge and experience with others strengthened the entire team's capability and effectiveness. Fellow Marines began to seek her advice on everything from shooting techniques to tactical planning. As her deployment progressed, Maria participated in increasingly complex and dangerous missions. Each operation built upon previous experiences, requiring her to adapt to new challenges and threats. The Taliban learned to fear American snipers and adjusted their tactics accordingly, making her job more difficult and dangerous. Yet Maria continued to perform at the highest level, earning commendations and the trust of her commanders who knew they could count on her when situations became desperate. The mountain warfare environment of Afghanistan created unique challenges that played to Maria's strengths. Her small size allowed her to move through terrain that would slow larger Marines, while her endurance enabled her to operate effectively at altitudes that left others struggling for breath. She developed an intimate understanding of how wind, temperature, and atmospheric conditions affected long-range shooting in the thin mountain air. Her growing reputation as an exceptional combat Marine reached higher levels of command, but it also attracted skepticism from those who had never served with her. Staff officers who dealt in statistics and Reports found it difficult to believe that someone of her physical profile could achieve the results being attributed to her. This skepticism would eventually grow into the controversy that would define the final phase of her military career. Despite the doubts of distant commanders, Marines who fought alongside Maria had no questions about her abilities or contributions. They had seen her perform under pressure, watched her make shots that saved lives, and witnessed her courage in situations where lesser Marines might have faltered. To them, Maria Rodriguez represented the best of what the Marine Corps could produce, a warrior who combined skill, courage, and dedication in service to her country and her fellow Marines. The foundation for future controversy was being laid during these successful combat operations, though Maria remained focused on the mission rather than politics or perceptions. She understood that her job was to eliminate threats to American forces and accomplish assigned missions. Everything else was secondary to that primary responsibility. Her dedication to duty and excellence would soon be tested in ways she never anticipated, as success in combat led to scrutiny from those who questioned whether such success was possible.